pieces. All right, so we have our underpainting. It's dry. It's been drying for a couple days now. So what we're going to do is we're going to start. I already worked on it just a little bit, actually. So all I have to do now is this orange right here. And you can still see my underpainting with the gray right there. So what we're going to be learning today for our finishing touches is fat over lean. And what that means is how much product do we have. So what we're going to do, so for my orange, I'm going to mix up a little bit this light cadmium red with some yellow, with some lime yellow, kind of start getting your orange. But I'm not going to add any white. I'm actually want it pretty thin. Because one of the great things about oil paint is that we can see through, we can see underneath the layers if we wanted to. So I'm going to put on the first coat. So what's really awesome about this technique is that I already did all the hard work with my underpaint. I already have all the shadows in. Ideally, I just want to be able to brush this on very lightly, and then you will already be able to see the shadows that are underneath this orange. You can already kind of start to see it. It's really beautiful.
Just a reminder for those watching or listening, this is live, so go ahead and leave your comments, questions. Katie will answer.
Yes. Have any the method of how I usually paint, but for a lot of people, this method is really great to learn, especially when you're first starting out. It teaches us about volume and shadows instead of worrying about color. Because color kind of can be overwhelming. I know that when color was introduced to me in my second painting in undergrad, I was a bit overwhelmed. I think I had a meltdown. I think I cried that class. Yeah, just a very thin layer. All right, so that's looking pretty good. So I just have one layer of orange on there. But we're not quite done yet. I want to add actually just a little bit of a thin blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my solvent, my Gamsol, or my low order turpentine. Okay, I'm kind of mixing this gray and with a little bit of this ultramarine blue, kind of this almost this greenish. I'm going to make color in that shadow because it's not quite dark enough for me. I'm just going to come in. Right. And I'm actually gonna dry brush it out. Blend it into the rest of that orange. It's looking pretty good. So now, got that in. I think I'm just gonna start building up a little bit more of my color, make it just a little bit more vibrant. Really make, this is really beautiful with the blue in the background, those two complementary colors. I'm still being careful not to completely cover up my under. It's giving me a lot of that orange texture. a little bit here. Never, you know, you accidentally mess something up, it usually kind of wipes off. Sometimes I just kind of go in there with my fingers. Just a little bit more yellow.
If you're just joining us, we're on the final session of still life painting with Katie Petersen. If you have questions or comments or want to share something, you can do that through our Facebook page and we will follow up with Katie. If you have a project going, we'd love to hear from you how it's going.
Yes.
Difficulties, triumphs, whatever.
Yeah, and if you could, maybe post it online. We'd love to see what you made. All right. I even got myself some new brushes for the event. It was time.
Nice.
Nothing like working with new brushes, let me tell you.
And where do you buy your brushes at, Katie?
I bought them from everywhere. I've gotten brushes from Hobby Lobby. I've gotten a couple from Walmart. Uh, you know, I'm not too picky really about my brushes. I actually don't keep most of all my brushes even after kind of they're past their time because once they kind of start flaring out a little bit, just from damage, the dam salt, you kind of can use them for different effects. So I don't really throw them out, but I really like kind of this nylon. It's just really soft. It's really nice to have like a smooth covering. It comes in I got these from Hobby Lobby. Nice variety pack.
Eric Stern says looks great. Keep up the good work.
Hi. All right. So I have my orange finish. I think I'm actually just going to put on the finishing touches, and then I'll show you how to get your painting ready for the gallery. So for finishing touches, usually I really like to, really have it really be dark, and the darkest areas I'm painting be really bright in my highlights. To make everything really pop, really stand out. I'm just kind of going in here with some Beams Gray.
Do you have any tips for with mixing paints to kind of match some of the colors on a still life?
So with mixing paints, I really keep in mind undertones, and for greens, I really like to mix my own greens. Green's kind of a difficult color, I think, to just get right out of the tube. Sometimes there's just so many, maybe it's just because there's just so many greens out there. I like to have a little bit more control over that. Like, usually, again, I mix my own, because when I get it out, it's usually never what I'm looking for. So I usually have to mix it. Um, I try and keep the color wheel in mind, keep my complementaries in mind. But if you're looking for the exact, if you run out, if you just run out of paint that you've already mixed. But and again, usually a lot of times if paint mixing close is good enough. If you Usually with oil painting, it'll usually blend together anyways. It'll be okay. Again, I don't really worry too much about that.
Looks like Brian Seal is joining us. Hi, Brian. Over at the Wise Old Owl.
Nice. And if you really like this type of still life work, the famous fruits and bowl type of still life, I really suggest actually looking at Clara Peters' work. She's a Flemish artist from the Northern Renaissance.
And say her name again.
Clara Peters.
Clara Peters.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah. So she did a lot of still life paintings with fruit and perishable foods because in that time the middle class was actually starting to grow, but they're still very deeply religious, so they're getting all these material wealth, but they're very religious. They're devout Christians, but we know that like what's the point of having material goods if you can't take it with you and they die? That is what their belief. So her work reflects that a lot because many of her fruits and the meat that she has, it shows it unwrapped. It's unwrapped. It's going to spoil soon. Sometimes she draws insects around it that are feeding off really the decaying food. And
Sounds interesting and scary at the same time.
yeah. But, yeah, you can add really a lot to these types of still lifes. A lot of like for me personally, my still lives, I really like creating Vanitas, where it is that contemplation on the brevity of life and the passage of time, usually through objects. I usually like using a lot of mirrors. Sometimes I use bones from animals. I use a couple of taxidermy animals. I have a pheasant in one of mine and an armadillo in one. And then I like to add mirrors because I believe that's a reflection, a symbol of reflection on oneself.
And mirrors can definitely add another level to it.
All right, just gotta add some pure white highlights, kind of where this line is. Some clear. Nice finishing touches. Let's say yes. We're almost there. We're almost done.
I feel like you're moving right along.
Yeah. We are. We're gonna be done
I don't
in
know
minutes.
if you mentioned to the watchers that you had kind of worked ahead at home.
I did. I worked ahead at home just so we can move just a little bit quicker because I do want to talk about just getting your work ready for the gallery. I want to see what you guys did. I'll see your guys' beautiful works.
Just a reminder for everyone listening, watching, that our All member show at the Fremont Area Art Association is August 4th through September 26th. It's a 2-month show. And so if you haven't submitted your work yet, there's still, maybe a day or two. Technically, yesterday was the last day, but we'll, especially if you're working along with Katie, we'll work with you on that. So just contact the gallery, but we would love to see your pieces in here. All members show.
All right. So I actually think we're done with this one. So here's the finished one. This was fun. I really enjoyed this. It's been a long time since I did like a fruit and still life. I like the colors. And this is a technique that I normally don't use, but it's good. It's good to try new things because that's how you learn.
Can you remind everyone of the technique?
Yeah. So this is the grisaille method. We start with a gray underpainting, and then we paint the color over that gray underpainting once it is completely dry. So now we're going to talk about finishing up this painting. So I worked ahead, and I actually already did 3 of the borders. And what that means is that we're going to be painting this space right here. We're going to set that there.
That could alleviate need for a frame, right?
Yes, yeah, it creates kind of this invisible border. And what I like to do, a lot of people have different preferences of how to finish up the borders. Me personally, I really like just a pure black border all around. Some people like to extend the painting. For me, that feels like extra work. And I mean, like, does it really need that? Some people leave it white. I really encourage you not to leave it white unless you're framing. It feels kind of just undone. So what I like to do is I actually like to add some tape and line it up perfectly with the edge of the canvas.
And that's just regular masking tape?
Yep, masking tape, painter's tape, that will all work. So I'm going to take some of just my pure black. I'm excited because I thought I can use that black. I tried, again, I still tried really hard not to use black. I really forced myself to use, either that warm or cool gray.
I think that helps add a little bit of realism to still life.
Yeah, you really won't see pure black in nature, unless you're in a vacuum in space. You're in essentially like a black hole because black is just, it's devoid of light. It's the only time that I guess you'd ever really find pure black in nature. But it's, you know what though, it's really wonderful for cleaning up borders. Me personally, when I'm printmaking, I really like black and white prints, just how stunning and bold they can be.
You don't find too much black in our house. We have 4 pets, so all of our black is covered in pet hair.
Yeah, that too. That too. I guess, it can be the same for white. Again, I usually do even with my white, I try to add a little bit of blue or yellow to it, just so it's not pure white. I try to use that very, very sparingly. All right, so we have that done. Take off our tape. And actually what I like to do after I take off my tape, sometimes you might get a little bit of paint underneath the tape. It might go onto your painting. So I usually like to take a cloth and just kind of brush it in. Yep. So after that, we're not quite done yet. So I'm going to put this to the side because it still needs to dry for a couple more days before I want to do this next step. once it dries.
Yes.
Right? Yes, once it dries.
Does this look familiar to anyone, maybe? We did a virtual art chat with Katie in early or mid-June.
I think it might have been late June. I don't know.
And this is the final.
Yes. So I have it all. I finished it. I did the borders, but I want to really get it ready for showing. So what I like to do is I like to add a little bit of varnish. Varnish usually comes in three types. There's a matte, satin, or a gloss. I like the satin. It's kind of a mix between the gloss and the matte. It gives it a little bit of shine, but it's not plasticky, I guess is the best way to describe it. And a little bit goes a long way, so I'm just going to pour a little bit into my plate. And probably a very important step is to have a clean brush because we're going to brush it over our painting and we don't want anything to ruin all the work that we've done.
So one of the reasons why it's important to wait till it's completely dry.
Yes.
And not just a few hours, but like a day or two?
I would say even weeks.
Okay.
A lot of people actually will call it curing the oil on the canvas usually. You know, some people will wait months.
And can they buy that varnish here in town?
So I actually bought this varnish at Gomez in Lincoln back when I was getting ready for my senior show. I haven't looked to see if Hobby Lobby has it. I'm assuming that they do. They buy this. They have Gamsol from this brand, Gamblin. So I would assume that they do, but I know that Gomez and Lincoln definitely has that. And you don't really need a lot. Like this one bottle is only half gone, and I used it for I think maybe 20 of the paintings that I've done. A little bit will go a long ways. You just want really nice light coat. This also helps to protect their paint from the sun, lighting. Maybe if it gets bumped or scratched, it won't protect it. You know, if it falls off the back of your vehicle. But I don't know how well you guys can see it, but it is giving this a little bit of a shine to it. You know, it has this pristine finished feel to it.
And so I would assume that it's kind of up to the artist if they want like a matte or a semi-gloss or a higher gloss.
Yep. Yeah. So this one again, I usually go for a satin, kind of a happy medium between that.
Does that last forever? Do you need to reapply it every time?
It should last as long as you have decent paint. You know, you use oil. You never say mix oil and water together or try to use acrylic. It should last for a very, very, very long time, hopefully.
And so you said using like good quality paint. So if you see oil paints that seem like they're a real bargain in the store next to some more expensive ones, maybe that's something to consider that they might not last in your painting as long?
Yeah. Sometimes they can get kind of dusty or like it'll be harder to paint. That happens a lot too, where there's just not a lot of product in the paint, and you usually have to kind of beef it up with white, or you have to add multiple layers. And you know that it'll just take longer.
And so when you say it doesn't, is it maybe as easy to paint with some of the cheaper ones? You mean like it doesn't kind of glide on as well?
No, as in like there's just not enough. There's not enough color. If you like
pigments?
yeah, yeah, there's not enough pigment. So like this one is, I think it's like one of my first oil paint colors that I got, but I want to use it up. Is it doesn't really have a lot of pigment. Like if I just put it right onto my palette and kind of swished it around my brush, like I could very easily see the white underneath of it. It's very translucent. It's kind of almost like wax paper. Usually the nicer paints will have a little bit denser color to them. But then again, there's some different colors that like Azorian Crimson is kind of notoriously known for being kind of a lighter color. You do need to be able to have something underneath of it to support it. So as you can see right through it, which is I usually actually mix that one with like the blue or another red. But so
So maybe if someone at home is noticing that their paints have, or the canvas is still kind of showing through, it could be paints, not
Yeah.
color.
yeah. Yeah, and again, there's ways to work around it. It's just how much time you want to spend on a painting, uh, and how much of an underpainting you want to spend on it. So um, we're actually pretty much finished, I believe, with this. I think for this one, since it's kind of darker on the bottom, I actually go and sign it on the back. I like to sign and date my work. Usually I do sign it on the bottom left-hand corner right here. But again, since I did use kind of this Payne's gray, it's going to be a little bit too darker. Some people like to paint it on. I usually use Sharpie. I use Sharpie to sign with. That works fine. Usually, what you'll do is you'll sign it first, then put your varnish on. But I knew I was going to put my signature on the back anyways, so
So if someone has a canvas and they want to bring it in the show, which it would need to be ready to hang, can you kind of briefly, what would they need to do to be able to hang it in the gallery?
okay. So what I usually do for hanging, they come in little packets actually at Hobby Lobby. You can get them at Michael's. Really any art store will have them. Hardware stores actually have them too, but I usually get these little eyelets that I will screw into the back of this wood. And usually the rule is that you want to have them 2/3 up from the bottom of your painting.
Little, and they're called screw eyes, is that
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, and then you can just take a wire and stretch it across there. You want it to be kind of tighter so when you hang it, it doesn't jump down, um, but not too tight where you cannot like, get it on the nail or hook that you have it on. But yeah, 2/3. Make sure it's even. That's really it. I've been. People worry about having to drill holes into the back of the wood. And I actually haven't. I've actually been able to just do it by hand and just drill it in by hand.
So those, and you can find those, I think, at Hobby Lobby, probably Ace Hardware or Menards, like picture wire and screw eyes, that's all it needs. Just make sure that, I suppose that the wire is really twisted on there really well.
Yes. Yeah, I usually do use a wire to clamp it down. So, yeah, and it's usually, I've used that for my big, 60 by 40, and it hangs up pretty well. Um, but,
Well, we don't have any
So, yeah.
questions or comments, so I
Great.
think if you are at a stopping point, I think it looks amazing, and your still life looks amazing as
yeah,
well.
look at this.
It was really fun to watch you work on these. And thank you, Katie, for doing this for us.
Yes.
Both paintings. And I think one of these will be in the all members show. You can come, or maybe both.
I know that I'm definitely putting my still life in. I don't know. I don't know if I want to put this one in or maybe one of my other drawings, one of my Vanitas.
So come to the gallery August, September, and you can see what Katie puts in the show and everyone else. We have probably about 75 pieces ready to be hung next week, so it should be a great show. But thank you for doing this. And we're in talks of maybe doing some more things with Katie down the road, so stay tuned.
Yeah, maybe some art history.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.